who do you think was the Giants' position player MVP? It's actually a pretty nuanced and kind of complicated situation, and I think the person who probably comes to mind for you may not be the person who I say I think was the MVP on the position player side.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case like I did, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's J-A-S-E medical.com. And coming up on today's show, as I said we would do yesterday, we are going to rank the Giants' position players. And what did I say? Who was the MVP? And I wonder who comes to mind for you. I think that a lot of people, the guy who's going to come to mind is going to be, what do you think? Wilmer Flores, I think is what a lot of people would say. And I think that would be true if we were simply talking about offense alone. And sure enough, let me just sort. Yes, by offense alone, Wilmer Flores was in fact the Giants' best player. He was their best hitter. He had a 136 weighted runs created plus. My goodness. I mean, what a year for Wilmer Flores. 284 average, 355 on base, 509 slugging. Like, if you had told me that was Joc Pederson's slash line, I would have. I mean, that's kind of un-Joc Pederson-like in some ways. But regardless, Flores, if we're talking offensive MVP, for sure. However, when I'm thinking about MVP and baseball in general and evaluating talent, it goes beyond simply offense. Flores is not a good base runner. I think we can all agree on that. It is not a very controversial take at all that he's slow. Maybe he's fine at like decision making on the bases, but he's slow. And defensively, I think he's out of place anywhere other than anywhere other than first base. If he plays third, which he did a lot down towards the end of the year because J.D. Davis hurt his shoulder. I don't know. The season was kind of over when he started playing a lot of third. But for the most part, he was like a DH and a first baseman this year. So anyway, those positions, especially DH, provide, if we think about like when this is where a number like WAR, wins above replacement, comes into. This is where it has value, is because it takes into account what position you play, and that different positions have different values. Like if you're an average defensive first baseman, I think we can all agree that an average defensive shortstop is more valuable than an average defensive first baseman. And an average defensive center fielder is more valuable than an average defensive left fielder. You know what I'm saying? And so for Flores, he kind of gets penalized overall when we're talking about team MVP because he's not someone who provides much defensive value at all. Even though I think he's solid at first base defensively, being solid defensively at first base is not the same as being great defensively at second base, which is where we segue into who I believe truly was the Giants team MVP, and that's Thairo Estrada. And Estrada was a significantly worse hitter than Wilmer Flores. If we go by weighted runs created plus or whatever, Estrada was about average offensively, even though, he hits for a higher batting average than the league average. He also gets on base at about an average rate because he doesn't walk much. He's kind of a free swinger. Stolen bases, he's also someone who's a runner, and that gets factored into a number like wins above replacement as well, because base running is part of that equation. And so that's the thing. It's like, if you just want to look at average home runs, RBIs, and steals, you're just like kind of trying to, and then like mash them together in your head and try to make a value out of it. That's basically what WAR is doing anyway. It's just a little more scientific, I guess. It's just like combining your offensive contributions and your base running contributions and your defensive contributions, trying to account for everything that you do that's tangible and like quantifiable. Obviously, the intangibles are not included in numbers like these, but by FanGraphs wins above replacement, Tyro Estrada was by far the Giants' best position player, coming in with a 3.9 FanGraphs WAR season, which is kind of crazy considering he missed a month with a broken bone in his wrist or hand or whatever when he got hit by that pitch in New York playing the Mets. So if he had played a full season, we're probably talking about 4.5. But a lot of this value, like I said, average offense, mediocre offensively. Although he started out much better than that, and then he kind of fell off. But the defense was incredible. By multiple different metrics would say this. And I do my victory lap every time I bring this up. There were people in the offseason saying that Estrada was not a good defender based on one season of defensive runs saved, having Estrada negative last year. But this year, he was just sensational defensively. There was just no complaints. He's got a lot of range. He's got a quick exchange at second. He has an accurate arm. It's not like the strongest arm, but it's accurate, and you don't need a super strong arm to play second. And so I would say Tyro Estrada was the team MVP, and I can't believe I was busy on the night of the Willie Mack Award, but he won the Willie Mack Award, right? And so, okay, most inspirational. So he gets the intangibles as well. And so there you go. I'm pretty sure he won it. I really should know that. Before I just go on the air and say that he did. But Tyro Estrada for me was the team MVP, and in some ways that's a problem because, that's a good season for FanGraphs wins above replacement. It's certainly not MVP level, but it's all-star caliber production. And I don't know, the last time the Giants had a player get to 4 was probably in 2021 with Posey and Crawford and maybe even Belt as well. So, and that's with missing a month too. But other than that missed month, he didn't miss any time. He played 120 games. And so if he played that month, then he would have played like almost every single day. Not a platoon. Anyway, tip my hat to Tyro. Also, credit where credit's due to the front office for picking this guy up for cash in a trade with the Yankees. They literally just gave him some money, and the Giants got Thairo Estrada, who is a good player. He is part of the solution in San Francisco. He still has 3 more years of team control, potential extension candidate this winter, but at the very least, you have him under team control for 3 years, and he could play shortstop in a pinch. The guy is valuable, and if he could chase a little less, that would be great. But whatever. Anyway, we spent maybe a little bit too much time focusing on the MVP. So coming up in just a minute, we're gonna get through like pretty much all of the position players, and so we'll be going through them a lot quicker than this. But there's like different categories to put them in. We've got the rookies, and we've got the kind of solid meaty middle that the Giants had. They just simply lacked that like high impact talent, and maybe a couple of them. And then where did things go wrong? There were definitely position players whose production hurt them. Where were those weak spots? We will get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Jace Medical provides the Jace case, which is 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. I just picked mine up recently. They're sitting in the cabinet in my kitchen. I'm going to Mexico soon, and my partner, who is a nurse, has indicated that it is a very good idea to have such a thing on hand for international travel. And not only international travel, but as we've seen recently with things like a global pandemic, you can run into supply chain issues. And so having something like this on hand is a great thing. Don't be caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. Jace handles everything from online evaluations to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. So, get $20 off, by the way, these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using the code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. All right, here we go. Not more questions and answers. What the heck am I talking about? More breaking down the position players on the Giants. And hey, we're going to talk about more than just one person going forward. So if you're watching on YouTube, you see the bullet point says Patrick Bailey was a cut above. And he was. But it was a large rookie class, and that's what I'm referring to. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we're going to be ranking the pitchers, and I think it's an easy call at the top, and then there's a lot of confusion afterwards, and we'll break it down and the rookies and who figures into next year and all that. But let me just jump right in. Patrick Bailey, according to, again, Fangraphs wins above replacement, actually came in second on the Giants, even ahead of Wilmer Flores, despite playing in only 97 games. Obviously called up he didn't start the season on the team. And as a catcher, he had a lot of rest days. His offense really fell off, as we kind of predicted it would, based on like a high average on balls in play that was totally unsustainable. But defensively, if you look at, Baseball Savant, which like does framing, grading, and blocking and pop times to second base, like basically how quick are you from when the ball hits your glove to the time that you get the ball to the base on a stolen base attempt. Bailey was just kind of elite at all of it defensively. And so despite being more than 20% below average offensively overall, like he stunk offensively after the first month or so, frankly. And all due respect, I mean, he's a rookie. I'm not saying he's going to therefore stink offensively for the rest of his life, but offense wasn't his strong suit for the last several months of the season. But defensively, he was so strong that he still put up nearly a 3 WAR season, according to Fangraphs, in 97 games. And so ton of value. And again, people were comping him to Buster Posey right away, and I said, whoa, pump the brakes. I think the comp is more Yadier Molina, a young Yadier Molina, which is quite the comp. I mean, I don't make comps like that lightly. And I would say Bailey's defense at times, like you saw some wild throws, a lot of throws into center field. Like he was up there among the team leaders in errors. Speaking of, how I don't put a lot of emphasis on errors, Bailey, he may have ended up leading the team when all was said and done. I'll have to look into that. But the errors don't tell the full story at all. It's not, if you looked at just errors, you'd be like, okay, well, Bailey's the worst defender on the Giants, which is the opposite of the truth. So anyway, I'm ranking him second because, I mean, he and Wilmer Flores both were pretty darn good. And number 3, I'm going Wilmer Flores. I'm just looking at like ranking Fangraphs wins above replacement. I'm probably not going to just completely go in order. You could flip-flop he and Wilmer Flores. Flores was just so steady and so consistent and so good. I mean, it was a career year for Wilmer Flores, and he did all this. Like, the Giants had their strikeout problems this year, and Flores struck out 13.9% of the time, which is just super low. He led the team in homers with 23. He was the only guy with more than 20 homers, and just what a great season he had. And again, credit to, 3 for 3 on giving some credit to the front office that gets a lot of heat. And we'll get, they deserve heat for certain reasons. But Estrada was picked up in a trade for cash. Bailey was drafted under this front office. Wilmer Flores was signed by this front office and that extension that they gave him last year. He was going to reach free agency at the end of last year, but instead they gave him a 3-year extension, and it looks like really, really good now that you've got 2 more years of Wilmer Flores at least, if you want to. The 3rd year is complicated. It's a player option. If he declines it, it becomes a club option, but more expensive, but still cheap. Anyway, love Wilmer. I think everybody loves Wilmer. And he's been here a long time now, and he's going to be here probably at least 2 more years. So, great season. You could make a case for him to be number 1 or number 2 here. And then, we'll get into the rest of the rookies later, but when I call it like the meaty middle, there was solidness from 3 guys: J.D. Davis, LaMonte Wade Jr., and Mike Yastrzemski. I think those 3 guys, you could maybe throw Austin Slater into that mix, maybe, but not so much. He missed a lot of time. Wasn't the best season for him. But Davis, Wade, and Yastrzemski, I think, were like solid contributors. And at times more than that. Davis and Wade, I kept saying in the early part of the season, were being deserving of going to the All-Star game. But they both fell off in the second half, as did everybody except Wilmer Flores, which is hilarious. But Davis, basically all 3 of them ended up having like a league average major league player type of season, and that's solid. You need guys like that, and so all 3 are like major league contributors. They're not stars, but they pulled their weight. Streaky at times, which was frustrating. Like Davis was super streaky. But anyway, those 3 guys were really solid. But then you start to get into like, where did things go south after that list of basically Tyro, Bailey, Flores, Davis, Wade, and Yastrzemski. I would probably put Wade ahead of Davis, and Yastrzemski maybe even ahead of Davis, and perhaps even ahead of Wade. Wade just started out so well, but really did fall off later. Yastrzemski, the biggest issue was that he missed a lot of time. 3 different IL stints with the hamstring. So those 3 guys, I call it like the meaty middle. And you need guys like that. You're not just going to have a superstar at every position. Having these guys, I remember last year, people were like furious when they tendered a contract to Mike Yastrzemski or like avoided arbitration with Mike Yastrzemski. He's a solid player. It's just he shouldn't be your best player. He shouldn't be close to your best player. But if you have him and you have some stars, that's when things look good. But then there's a lot of disappointment after this. And so I really think coming up in just a minute, we're going to just basically talk about disappointments, but also guys who have promise, like the rest of the rookies. Where do they come in, like in terms of ranking them, but also projecting into the future for them. So we'll get into the rest of everybody, and it's going to be a lot of guys in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. October baseball is back, and you can make your postseason debut with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Join FanDuel today, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to create your new account. Then you can get in on the action from the first pitch until the final out. Bet on everything from strikeouts to home runs to who will win the game. And if you don't want to wait the whole game to get a dub, predict what will happen in the next at bat with quick bets. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Step up to the plate this postseason with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Okay, as promised, not more questions and answers. No, we are going to continue ranking the Giants' position players this disappointing season. Overall, I mean, it was a crazy year in that they fell apart after late June and just like never got back on track, really. Team-wide, except Wilmer Flores. What a crazy phenomenon. Anyway, thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every day or tomorrow, we're going to be doing the same thing, but with the pitchers. It's even weirder with the pitchers. I think it's weird with the position players, but it's even weirder with the pitchers. So, I mean, think of how weirdly they use their pitchers. And so that will be part of what gets factored in. Anyway, we're going to continue ranking these guys. Michael Conforto. He's the guy I want to talk about next. He was just like the epitome of mediocre at the plate and not great in the field. There's like this widespread assumption that he opts out. And to be perfectly honest, I hope that he does, because that would open up a spot where you could make some improvements and get, more athletic, which Farhan Zaidi talked about, the desire to get more athletic in the outfield, improve the defense in the outfield. And Michael Conforto, I think, was part of the problem. I said this from like the beginning of the year. I just was not liking the way he moved. I kept saying it looked like he had like arthritic hips. And I know that's maybe insulting, and I apologize if Michael Conforto or his family and friends are listening, which they're not. But he's just not moving great. I watch a lot of other teams. You watch the Diamondbacks and how they just run around out there like rabbits. And then you watch Michael Conforto and it's a little more of a struggle. So not a great season for him. And I said in the very beginning of the year, either Conforto or Haniger had to have a big season for the Giants to get to the playoffs. And neither of them did, and the Giants didn't get to the playoffs. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Conforto was disappointing, like majorly. And Mitch Haniger, way even more so. So we'll get to him later. Austin Slater. Apparently, like the belt wars are over, and now it's the Slater wars, I think, is kind of how I would evaluate this. There are people out there who think that Austin Slater is terrible, and I don't understand it one bit. He's been one of the best hitters against left-handed pitching over the last several seasons. He's literally the all-time leader in pinch hit, like weighted runs created plus and OPS. Like nobody in the history of baseball has a higher OPS as a pinch hitter than Austin Slater if you set the minimum to 100 pinch hit opportunities. So what are we talking about when we're like, DFA Slater? Like, come on, give me a break. He is what he is. He hits left-handed pitching. He was injured. He's having an elbow operation So sometimes if a guy's like struggling, you have to consider the fact that maybe they're not 100% healthy. And I think that was the case with Slater this year. Only played in 89 games. It definitely wasn't his best season. And he almost looked like he was nursing a hamstring like the whole season, never really sprinting 100%. But arbitration eligible, it's just kind of a no-brainer to bring him back. The guy has value in the game. If they were to make him available in a trade, there would be a ton of interest. And so, but they probably won't because he's, again, part of the solution. Really good at what he does. And don't try to make him more than that, and it's fine. Blake Sable, we're going to discuss him. I mean, a success story in the fact that a Rule 5 pick who made it the whole season with the team, had some big moments, hit a walk-off home run, at least one, and overall just kind of held his own at the major league level. Raw defensively, I would say both at catcher and in the outfield. But, you know, he struck out a lot, 34% of the time. Huge platoon splits. Was much better against righties than against lefties. Against lefties, he had no chance, essentially. And against righties, though, he was pretty solid. But, you know, now he sheds the Rule 5 status and he can be optioned. And so that adds, I mean, he made it. It's rare for a player to make it a whole year as a Rule 5 pick, and he did. Joc Pederson, massive, maybe not massive, but disappointing year. Just did not have the same type of results we saw last year, and it looks like a kind of stupid decision to have given him nearly $20 million that they could have spent elsewhere to bring back Joc Pederson. A lot of you said this at the time, and you were right. A platoon DH getting the qualifying offer, in retrospect, after the season he had, like, looks like a dumb decision. And there you have it. So his contract is up, and I doubt that they bring him back. Brandon Crawford had a miserable season. We discussed this yesterday. About 40% below average offensively. Hit 194 for my batting average friends. 273 on base, 314 slugging. Just miserable offensive numbers and declining defense, and I hope he retires a Giant and is a legend forever, but it just obviously wasn't a good year for him. Tyler Fitzgerald showed me some things when he was up here. I was impressed by his kind of at-bat quality and just kind of what he can do on the field, and Farhan Zaidi called him one of their better defensive center fielders, or not one of their better. He said that he's the best defensive center fielder in the organization. So sometimes it's hard to rank these guys. Like Tyler Fitzgerald played 10 games and according to Fangraphs was worth, you know, almost as much as Brandon Crawford, who played 94 games. And same with Marco Luciano, played in just 14 games, and yet he's like right up there with Brandon Crawford and Joc Pederson even. So I'm not really ranking them as much as I'm just kind of referencing everybody and saying how I feel about them, I guess, is a more appropriate way of putting this. Marco Luciano, we saw the flashes of what he can do. We also saw maybe a tendency to strike out too much, but Farhan Zaidi has called him the opening day shortstop and shortstop of the future, and I think that's exciting. The physical, he looks the part to me, and you're always going to have growing pains. Like if you look at the beginnings of careers for tons of great players, they were not good in their first year, sometimes or two, and then they became really good. And I kind of feel Marco Luciano gives me those vibes. So I just feel like he's going to be good. Cameos from Darren Ruff and Bryce Johnson, meh. Bryce Johnson elected free agency. He's probably gone. Joey Bart cameo, meh. Like just more of the same, not much. Austin Wynns had one plate appearance. Roberto Perez, remember him? Nothing to say there. Matt Beatty, remember him? Not much to say there. Wade Meckler kind of struggled, but is a promising future piece for me, given if you look at what he did at the minor league level. Got pushed aggressively to the major leagues, but really impressive minor league numbers. And again, growing pains are normal at the major league level. Cal Stevenson, Mark Mathias, I mean, we're talking cameos here. Johan Camargo, cameos. AJ Pollock, cameos. A lot of moves and playing time that just kind of went to guys who were part of the problem. Mitch Haniger, one of the worst position players on the Giants this year, in 61 games, just never got going. Obviously, the fracture of his forearm didn't help, but even whenever he was healthy, he struggled. So that signing at the moment looks bad, but it was like the worst year of his career, except maybe his rookie season. And then others who had significant playing time, Elliot Ramos, another disappointing year at the major league level, hit 179, 233 on base, no bueno. Luis Matos, future is bright, but struggled defensively in center. That's my take. Lot of contact, low strikeout rate, needs to add physicality and power. That's my take. And then Brett Wisely and Casey Schmitt to wrap things up. They, the two of them combined for minus 1.1 Fangraphs win above replacement. And so there was a period in the middle of the season when things started to go south that these two were like the everyday middle infielders. It was like Schmitt at short and Wisely at second for like a month when Tyro was out and Crawford was injured. And they both just struggled enormously the whole time. And Wisely, like, I never really even saw the flashes. Defensively, yes. Wisely showed me some things defensively. With Schmitt, we saw the flashes offensively and defensively. So I think that there's certainly a future for Schmitt. Defensively, maybe out of position at short, but third, he could just be, the patience development. I'm not calling him the worst position player, by the way, even though I'm mentioning him last. Like I said, I'm just going through just going through how Fangraphs ranked them and just giving my take on these players. But Schmitt, I was so impressed, not just with Schmitt, but with Matos and Luciano as well, with their, for Schmitt, the improvement that he showed from his wild free swinging ways initially, he became much more patient. And so that kind of quick development was super impressive to me. And then on the final day of the season, he had 2 of his 5 home runs that he ultimately ended up with. And with the defensive upside that he brings, and I mean, he was taking good swings, like basically for the last several weeks of the season. And he finally just kind of got his timing right, I guess, and crushed some balls in that final game of the year, right? Or was it the final game of the season where he had the 2 home runs? I think it was. And so, anyway, Schmitt, it was a developmental year. And not saying he's a future star, but I am saying we saw the flashes on both sides of the ball. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every day or tomorrow, we're going to be ranking the pitchers in this same way. So please come back for that. And if there's any whispers about the Giants managerial search, we'll have that for you as well. Once again, my name's Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a ton, so thanks in advance. And thank you to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.